like for chairs, but if you go beyond your time limit, which is anyone up there know the time limit? 1.5 minutes. I know. Well, we'll get to that. Go ahead and go 3 minutes and see if your chair shocks you. Okay, here's what's going to happen. You do get 3 minutes for opening remarks. You were sweating for a minute, weren't you? Okay, here's what we're going to do. Each candidate's going to get 3 minutes to explain why they're running for office and what background experience is prepared them for office. After that, we're going to work our way through first with the county clerks and then with the county attorney candidates with questions. Now, as some of you are probably very aware, there were a lot of questions submitted. There wasn't any way to, we'll see how we do with time, but there was no way to include all the questions. So if you don't hear the question, catch them on the side later and ask them your question. But we got as many questions. We tried to sort them by, you know what, that seemed like the most important question. That doesn't mean yours isn't important. There were a lot of questions. And so we're going to do our best. I want somebody to stand up here because I want you to see how this works. When we go through here, they're going to get a time limit, okay? They're each going to get 1.5 minutes to respond to the question. We have someone sitting on the front row here who's going to give threatening looks to them and hold up cards and tell them how much time. Go ahead and stand and show the audience. She's going to hold up a card. The first one she holds up says, everybody repeat after me, 30 seconds. And then she's going to hold up another card that says, repeat after me, 15 seconds. And then she's going to hold up an angry face that says, sit down and shut up. Okay, so now you know what the candidates are looking at. And that's the rule. So if we can start with Rhonda, each person take 3 minutes and give us your spiel and tell us why you're going to do the very best job at this office.
All right. My name is Rhonda Eggle, and I am running for Sublette County Clerk. In 1986, I graduated from Chatham State College with degrees in Management and Business Administration. And for over 32 years, I have put my degree to work. I have developed a large emphasis in accounting, which includes, bookkeeping, which includes accounting practices, all aspects of payroll, accounts payable, accounts receivable, keeping track of budgets, job costing, DOT licensing, and various other multi-state bookkeeping and insurance reviews. I've been the office manager of 3 different offices, in which 2 of those offices I had 2 to 5 employees under me. I have worked in various industries such as agriculture, oil and gas, construction, and most recently at the Sublette Center in Medical dealing with Medicare and Medicaid. In all of these industries, the same rules have always applied for me. Treat people with decency and respect and learn to work with others. I feel like I've always shown up to work and have done my utmost to be a professional and to act like a professional. I have a proven record of being a successful office manager. I've always strived to challenge and bring the best out in my employees. I take time to mentor, build relationships, and trust with those I work with and for. I have integrity, honesty, and I am always teachable. I believe people can work together to make a better Sublette County, and I believe with my skill set, personality, that I am the best candidate for the Sublette County Clerk. And I would appreciate your consideration on August 21st. Thank you.
Thank you again for your time and attention this evening. We all have experiences in our lives that prepare us for the next thing. I grew up the oldest in a family of 4. We didn't have a lot, but we were a close family. I started a family of my own in my 20s and decided 2 was a good number. Well, my children were young. I started running in the mornings before they started their day. After they both started school, my love of running and fitness led me to consider a career in law enforcement. I started taking criminal justice classes at the local junior college and martial arts classes at the local Taekwondo. Associate degree and black belt in hand, I applied for and was hired as a patrol officer for the Carlsbad Police Department. Later that year, when I attended the New Mexico Basic Law Enforcement Academy, I became the first female valedictorian in the history of the state of New Mexico in 137 classes. In 2002, I had an opportunity to work on and participate in a congressional campaign. I learned many things about the political process during that time. This led me to run for probate judge in Lincoln County, New Mexico in 2004. I was elected at that time and re-elected in 2008. During this time, I maintained my law enforcement certification, and I assisted several of the local agencies when they were shorthanded or had special projects. Some of those experiences were rewarding and fulfilling, and some were not. And I'm happy to talk about those experiences with anyone at any time. Around 2005, while serving on the board of the church I attended, I realized I was at a disadvantage when the financial statements were presented. So I went back to the local junior college and took an accounting class. And I was completely fascinated at how the financial statements flowed from one to the other. Eventually, I started working on a degree in accounting. I graduated from Eastern New Mexico University with a bachelor's degree in business administration accounting, summa cum laude, in 2013, and immediately started working my way through the CPA exams, finishing those in 2015, at which time I received the designation of Certified Public Accountant. I am here today asking for your vote because the 5 years I have spent as a deputy clerk in the county clerk's office has prepared me to run for county clerk. I would not be asking you for this job if I didn't fully believe I am prepared to do the job. I know what the job entails, and I know what positive changes can be made and what needs to stay the same in order to maintain the continuity and stability of the clerk's office. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming out. I think this is our biggest crowd on record, so thank you. And I love seeing the young faces in the crowd. You guys, you're our future, so thank you for being here. I remember being here when I was your age, and it gives me great hope that maybe one day you'll be up here too. I was born on a ranch in Boulder, raised there. I graduated from Pinedale High School. I worked for Skinner Brothers for 8 summers, and for those of you that know Skinner's, we worked hard. I learned the value of working hard from morning to past dark. I learned the importance of always planning ahead for whatever worst case scenario was possible. And most importantly, I learned to talk to people from all walks of life, whether it was the Copenhagen spitting wrangler that didn't really appreciate having to take a shower, or the guests who just come in from California and was so excited to see our mountains and to go and learn more about them, and someday might possibly end up moving here because they appreciated their experience so much. I went to college. I spent over 30 years both in the Wyoming and Wind Rivers working for Skinner's and Allen's. I built my business right here in Sublette County, and in that time I met my husband. We were married right down the road and little church on the river, and now we get to see our kids peeking out of those same pews. So it's a real pleasure to be able to see my children growing up in this community. Through my business, I've learned to keep up with the latest technologies, and they come, no matter what business you're in, technology is going to be a battle. I've learned that technology is wonderful, but it's not always the answer. It's definitely something that needs to be taken and assessed. You can't always expect technology to be the answer, and it's also not friendly to everyone. So you can't just institute technology and expect people to jump right on board. I've built a statewide network of vendors and clients. I've managed employees, and most importantly, I've found that clients are happier when they are kept in the loop, when they understand what's going on, and most importantly, when they're being treated with kindness and respect. I've served Wyoming as a Wyoming State FFA officer, worked in the Wyoming legislature, both the House and the Senate. I was served on the Wyoming Rural Development Council, and I've volunteered all across this county since before I could even drive. And most of you know my face. It isn't the first time you've seen me at something, and it won't be the last. We are here, and we are here to stay. I have never run for elective office before, but I've worked on other campaigns, and I'm excited to bring my 15 years of self-employment, customer service, and my love of people to the greatest job, I believe, in Sublette County, and that is Sublette County Clerk. I don't have an agenda. I don't have an axe to grind. I'm not a one-trick pony. I am ready to go to work for each and every one of you. Thank you.
Sublette. I'm currently the Sublette County prosecuting attorney, and I am seeking re-election, seeking to be your Republican nominee for that position, because Sublette County deserves to have a county attorney who is fair, experienced, and committed to the county. Little background on me. For the past 8 years, I've been with the county attorney's office, first serving as the chief deputy county prosecuting attorney, and now as your county attorney's office. I currently serve as the Sublette County Bar president. I was also elected in 2016 to the vice presidency of the Wyoming County Prosecuting Attorneys Association, which is a statewide organization. I also sit on the Wyoming State Bar Jury Instruction Committee for Criminal Pattern Jury Instructions. We're currently looking at rewriting the self-defense laws or the self-defense jury instructions based on the legislature's newest law that went into effect in July. I'm sure some of you heard about it, Stand Your Ground law. Personal background on me. I was born in Greeley, Colorado, and I was raised in Fort Collins. I'm always a little reluctant to tell that to people, but folks around here are pretty forgiving and don't hold such transgressions against me. In 1995, I graduated high school, and I immediately joined the United States Navy, and I served for 4 years aboard the USS Paul F. Foster. It was a destroyer out of Fort Washington, and we went on 2 deployments to the Persian Gulf. When I got out of the Navy, honorably discharged, I began my studies at the University of Wyoming, and I graduated with a degree in German. After my graduation, needless to say, I didn't have a lot of job prospects. And so I needed to look at improving my professional resume, if you will, and law school seemed like a good option. And I began my studies at the University of Wyoming College of Law, and I graduated in 2009. And at that time, my wife, my daughter, and I moved to Sublette County, Boulder, to live on my wife's family's ranch. We still live there. We help out on the ranch as best we can. It's haying season right now, so it's awful busy. Looking at my time in office, in 3.5 years I've been the county attorney. I am very proud of our accomplishments, and when I say our accomplishments, I look at our office as a team, and together we've assembled very experienced, qualified, competent individuals with 67 years of combined legal experience. And going forward, I look to your vote on August 21st. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mike Austin. Thank you all for coming. This is a great crowd. I can't believe there are actually more people to watch 2 lawyers get skewered, but it's kind of humbling, honestly, to be on this side of the table because usually we're obviously on the other side. Anyway, a little bit about me. I'm a 4th generation Wyoming native. My family had a ranch down in Green River, Wyoming, where I spent most of my time growing up. On days off, every minute I had to spend. On the ranch, I learned a lot of good core values like hard work, persistence, and ingenuity, and I think those traits really help when you're an attorney, ironically, because when you're out on the ranch and you break apart or something, and you're in Wyoming, a lot of times you can't just run down to the local store and pick up your part. You have to come up with something, and baling and twine and duct tape, obviously, 2 big tools that work pretty well in those instances. But anyway, I began my career in law in 1993, law enforcement actually. I served as a deputy sheriff down in Sweetwater County. I served that for almost 6.5 to 7 years. During that time, I started as a detention officer, rose to the ranks of patrol deputy, I became a member of the SWAT team, and I was a sniper on the SWAT team, and enjoyed all of those roles. I received the Medal of Valor in 1998 for a pretty harrowing incident with a bank robber. There was a massive shootout down there. But in any event, I decided to go to law school in 2002. When I graduated from there, I received a job at the Sweetwater County Attorney's Office. I have experience in 2 very busy offices, Sweetwater County Attorney's Office, as well as I worked as an assistant DA in Laramie County for about 1.5 years. So combined, I have about 6 years total prosecuting experience. During that time, I handled wide and diverse caseloads. I was appointed Special Assistant United States Attorney by Matt Meade. He was United United States attorney that will not go to drugs. I want the directive to prosecute serious drug offenses. I consider hard drugs to be the scourge of our society. If you look at the underlying cause, the root cause of most of the problems we have in society, most of the crimes, and you boil them all down, a lot of times they evolve back to bad drugs like methamphetamine and actually heroin, which is coming on the scene, and that's equally bad or probably worse drug than methamphetamine. So if I'm elected, I look forward to aggressively prosecuting drug dealers. I think we have to do that to protect our children. It's terrible. It's a terrible drug. In any event, what I stand for quickly is conservative values. I want to reduce the per capita spending of the county attorney's office. Right now, we spend a lot more than every other county that I research locally. We're about 60 to 70 range per citizen, and neighboring counties like Lincoln County is in the 30s. We're far more than the Sweetwater County. So those are some of the core issues I have. If you want to talk to me further, I'd love to speak to each and every one of you about more of my stance for the time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, candidates. Those who have been in previous forums on how this works. Number one, these candidates have not seen the questions. Some may have imagined them in their nightmares, but they have not seen them. I have a lot more questions here in front of me than we have time for, and I've been given a little latitude. I'm going through it, and we're going to try to pick the ones that will get the best answer or the most challenging answers. The first question will go to Rhonda first. The second question will go to Carrie first, and you'll remember how that works. We'll try to rotate it so everybody gets a chance to be first and everybody gets a chance to be last. Clayton and Mike, you guys can kick back, take your shoes off, listen. Don't fall asleep though. It is your time to come. So we're going to start with the first question with Rhonda. You have a minute and a half. Debbie is ready to throw something at you if you exceed that. She looks at me. If everybody could see Debbie's face, she'd all, be scared. Okay, we're going to start off with a fairly easy question, or one to get the ball rolling. First question is, and if you don't understand the question, please ask me to repeat it. I'd be happy to. First question is, have you had any experience running an office with several employees?
I have, almost up until the last 3 years, every office I ran, I supervised at least 2 to 5 employees. I work at a 20,000 head feed yard in Nebraska, and I had 3 women under me there. And then I moved out here working for a bookkeeping company, and I had up to 5 women at one time. 5 women and 30 plus accounts that we did payroll and all types of bookwork for. And so I had to not only know everything about all those women, I had to know everything about all those accounts. So I've been very blessed because I've been able to have wonderful relationships with the people that I work with. And so, yes, I've kind of taken multitasking to a different level. That sometimes right now I'm working in 2 different offices in town. One, as I mentioned before, at the Sublette Center, and one is at which I'm not over per se I'm not officially over any people, but they do seem to end up in front of my desk. And then the other office, it is just myself there. So.
Do we get to count cattle as employees? 2007, 2008, I was the interim police chief in a little town in New Mexico called Carrizozo. There were 2 other officers, an office staff, and then several volunteers. I was in charge of them for about a year and a half. And in other situations where I've worked closely with the staff. That is the only time that I've been the one in charge of the budget, in charge of the staff, and scheduling, and all the things that go along with that.
In the last 15 years while running my own business, I have had as many as 3 staff members working for me, but granted, only 1 at a time in my office. So I have learned even from that, and also from sitting on boards, overseeing staff on boards, working in an office myself, I've learned the importance of building people up, encouraging their strengths, making people feel valued. I've learned that people who are appreciated do a lot more than people who are expected.
Very good. Now the mic goes to Carrie. Okay, this question caught my interest. It's a 2-part question. The first part's a question. The second part is instructions on how to answer the question. So listen closely.
Okay.
It's really a long one. Are you running for this position because of the salary? Part 2 of the question is, be honest.
Oh, okay. And the answer is no. I am not running for this position because of the salary. It does pay $92,000 a year, so that would be a bump up in what I make now. I am running because, having worked in the office, I see what all is involved in that office. It's not just bookkeeping. It's not just getting along with the public. And so I felt it was very important that the person that takes office after Mary, and I don't say fill her shoes because no one can fill her shoes, but the person that takes office after Mary have experience in that office, and I'm very passionate about that.
I will be the first to admit that I'm not running for the salary, but the salary, it makes it something that is a little easier for someone to quit their own business and walk away from. I've been very lucky and built a business I'm very proud of, and has made it possible for me to stay home and work with my kids and still actually make a good income. And this is a great job, and you work with a lot of money, and I think it's important that that salary, as much as it appears, be that amount, because it allows you to not be tempted. And I think then you see this across. Wyoming is one of the biggest states for people taking money that isn't theirs. And I think we actually rank at the very top in the nation. So I believe there's a value in paying county and especially elected officials well.
No. I can probably make more money in the private sector doing what I'm doing now, and have been offered more money in the private sector, so it has nothing to do with that. My concern about the salary is I try not to work for salary because I spend a lot of time at work, as my dear husband would attest. And so I usually do better if I'm at an hourly wage because I spend more time there. The salary doesn't always work out so well. It has to do with, it's a big budget. It's a big responsibility. And I honestly read through several times what the statutes say the clerk's characteristics should be, and I thought, wow, I think I can fall into a lot of these things. I do have the bookkeeping, I do have the management. I've filled out, I've learned, I've always been able to learn a new process. Like I said, I went from bead yards to construction to medical at the Sublette Center. So I feel like there may be a learning curve on some things, but I feel like I have the ability to cover that learning curve.
Is that mic down to Tara, who sits in fear of the next question? Here's the question. Please explain what fiscal responsibility means to you.
Oh, fiscal responsibility. I think that's a buzzword you will hear from every politician, whether they be Republican, Democrat. It's something that we all strive for. And for me personally, I think it's a lifestyle. It can't just be something you speak about. It can't just be something that you put on your pamphlet. It has to be a lifestyle, and it has to be being willing to recognize wants and needs. When it comes to being fiscally responsible, it means evaluating everything, whether it be in your personal life or on a county budget, being able to walk through with each department head and making sure that there isn't money being wasted, that we're being as efficient as possible, and that we are doing our best to spend Sublette County taxpayers' dollars efficiently, properly, and in a way that taxpayers would be proud to watch.
And yes, that's what fiscal responsibility is, looking at how money is being spent. If you see something that isn't being spent in the way you maybe think it should be, whether a voucher comes in from a department, it is something to be questioned to the head of that department or to whomever is spending the money. We are spending the taxpayers' money, and I always feel like when that person comes up and says, hey, why is this money being spent that way? I want to be able to give them an honest answer and being able to find out the whys. Because sometimes things look like it was a waste, But when you get the whole story, it might not have been such a waste. So being fiscally responsible is also knowing why that money got spent the way it did, not just slotting it into an account.
I think being fiscally responsible is not only watching out after the way the money's spent right now, but looking ahead to the long term. What are the long-term needs of the county? Do we need to cut back over here in things that we think we need so that we can build a road over here? It's not just paying the bills in the proper manner. You can pay bills in the proper manner all day long and run out of money. So being fiscally responsible is not only paying the bills properly now, but looking ahead to the future.
We're back to Rhonda with the next question. This is a longer question, so I'll repeat any piece of you want. If elected, will you issue and sign marriage licenses for same-sex couples? Will you support an employee who has religious reasons for not issuing a marriage license to a same-sex couple?
Yes, I would be able to do that. And if I had an employee who felt very strongly that they couldn't do that, I feel like I would like to have an office that's cross-trained. And so if that's an area that they are uncomfortable with, I would have no problem with moving them into a different area. That would probably be a question I would ask before hiring to possibly avoid that. But that wouldn't maybe be the final decision on their hiring either.
Would I be able to?
Okay, here's the question. If elected, will you issue and sign marriage licenses for same-sex couples? Will you support an employee who has religious reasons for not issuing a marriage license to a same-sex couple?
Okay, so that question was kind of floating around out there a little while ago, and when I left work today, I was under the impression that we had to do that. From what I understand from the conversation that I heard out in the audience, that recently the New Mexico or the Wyoming Supreme Court has said that employees do not have to issue a marriage license. So whatever the Wyoming Supreme Court says is what goes.
I think when it comes to being the county clerk, I think your job is to put your personal feelings aside, and it also means hiring people who can put their personal feelings aside and facilitate the law, facilitate government, do the job that you've been asked to do, and do it with a smile.
The next one's to you, Karen. Have you noticed none of these people are going a minute and a half?
And yes, I would give a marriage license to a gay couple.
Yeah, that was close to a minute. Okay, Carrie, you get the next question. Another long question, and if you need to ask me, and I'll repeat it. The clerk's office has extensive interaction with the public and all other departments of the county. What improvements could be made to improve the level of communication and efficiency in the clerk's office?
I'm on it. We've created a checklist so that when a person comes in with an involved vehicle transaction, they know what they need, where to get it, the order that they need it in, when to go to the treasurer's office and when to come back. Some of the confusion is in that complicated process. And we can fix that. And like Emily said, we've been talking about ways to streamline the Sublette County shuffle between the offices, and that's not going to be a hard thing to do, I think. The other thing is, I'm very passionate about every single person that walks through the door, no matter what the situation, be treated in a professional manner with courtesy and respect. And that's something that is not a choice. It's what we're going to do.
Would you repeat that question, Phil?
The clerk's office has extensive interaction with the public and all other departments in the county. What improvements could be made to improve the level of communication and efficiency in the clerk's office?
Wonderful. Thank you. I think this is a question I think could get a 5-minute response, so I'll try to keep it quick. When it comes to working with the public, there's a lot that could be done just to simplify the process, making the website even easier to use, making it possible for people to make appointments when they're coming in with the registration and the title. And that way they could get emailed out a specific list to what they need. And that way they're coming in with every document they need in hand. And it makes their experience better because they're informed, they're ready to meet with the clerks. And the clerks in the office are having a pleasant experience because they're not having to explain that, no, you can't get your titles paid, no, we can't do this. There's also a lot of other little things that can be done when it comes to just making sure forms online are updated, make sure links are updated, make sure minutes, agenda, all of that stuff is easily and readily available without having to futz around on the website. When it comes to working with other county departments, and that's a big thing in our county, I believe that a county intranet could really come in handy, making it possible for people, whether they're turning in hours, all of it, to do it over the internet through technology, so that you're not having to waste people walking around the county. There's lots of small things that could be done, but all of them would include embracing technology and taking advantage of them to make our county operate efficiently and effectively.
I'm going to go back to my opening statement. I said I take time to mentor, build relationships, and trust with those I work with. And I think that's how it gets started, is you begin to build that trust and those relationships with those people you are working with. The other thing is, we do work for the public. You are my boss. I don't treat my boss badly. He signs my paychecks, as so does the public. I try to keep that in mind when I'm working for anybody and with anybody. Not that that is my main motivator, because I do like people. I do like to be helpful, and I think that's what the clerk's office is supposed to be, helpful. We should be helping to educate. Not everybody knows every statute that is going on, or that is written in the state of Wyoming. I am just learning a lot about that in the last 4 or 5 years. So I think we are kind of can be that bridge between what's happening there and what's happening out in the public. And again, in the explanation of, why are you having me do this? Why can't there be a better way? So I think that's one of the main things, is remembering who we do work for.
Final question for the clerk again. Let's wipe your brows off, take a deep breath. This is your final one, so do it well. Here's the question. Since the county clerk receives each department's budget proposal and prepares the proposed county budget, please explain what experience you have had dealing with budgeting.
Of course, I will get this question first because I have the least amount of experience when I sit up here between two very talented women. But I think it's really important for us to keep in mind, when it comes to setting a budget and when it comes to the job of county clerk, there's so much more to it. The county clerk's office deals with elections, they deal with titling, they deal with the personnel, the HR, so many aspects of this county. And when the rest of the county can't figure out who's going to take care of it, they send it to the clerk's office. And I know that that can get frustrating, and it can probably get to be a bit of a heavy load. I am sure Mary will attest to that. But it's where it falls, and it's the job of the clerk to be someone who can be personal, somebody who can work with their office, work with the county, work with the commissioners, and make that happen. When it comes to budgets, budgets are set with each department, and also with whether it be some of the nonprofits, all of the people that receive money from the county. And it's not an easy process, but it's a process that's been done for a long time. You have the ability to look back and see what each department, what each nonprofit has asked for. You can compare, and you can look and talk to that department head and figure out why they're asking for more or where they see room for less. And lastly but not least, the budget is not decided on by the clerk. The budget is decided on by the commissioners. The clerk simply submits it and then distributes the money properly. And I believe, in my opinion, that is done through both the clerk and either a financial officer, such as Carrie, or by yourself.
Could you repeat that, please?
I'm sorry, I laughed. The stop sign came up very quickly. That was good. Okay. The question is this. Since the county clerk receives each department's budget proposals, since the county clerk receives each department's budget proposal and prepares the proposed county budget, please explain what experience you have had dealing with budgeting.
Okay, so I agree with Tara. I mean, I'm going to put out what the county commissioners agreed on. One thing that I've done in my budgets is, I'm going to go back to the figure. We have, I compare, usually when I do comparative financials, I do the last 3 months. What are we doing here? What's growing? What's not? Why is it growing? Why is it so high in this month? What's the reason for it? And then I'll also do this year to last year. So those are reports that I think each head of each department should also be seeing as well, as maybe Janessa doesn't realize that her paper supplies went out of control for whatever reason. And so those are reports that should be in front of those department heads as well, as a, hey, I'm seeing this as a red flag. Do you know why this is happening? Again, going back to the communication and looking at those departments' budgets and saying, is this right? Is this where you think you need to be? Is there something happening that needs to be adjusted one way or the other from last year or the year before to this year, from last month to this month, whatever the account might be?
Okay. Since the county clerk receives each department's budget proposal and prepares the proposed county budget, please explain what experience you have had dealing with budgeting.
Okay. When the budget is adopted by the county commissioners on the second meeting in July, then my job is to pay the bills according to that budget every single month, and we give them reports every single month. Every month, Janessa knows how much she spent on paper. Every month, and that's what I do. I prepare those reports and give them to the department heads and elected officials every month. Our accounting software is not QuickBooks. It's government accounting, it's fund driven, and the reports that are driven are show the budget and show the actual expense and show what's left of the budget. That's what I do every day, 360 something days a year, all those work days. And so that is where I have the experience. I'm very familiar with the county budget. Who can spend what? Who can make the county owe money? That's a big deal, is to know who can tell a vendor the county is going to pay you. And so I have that experience. I know the county budget.
Okay, that's clerk candidates. Now you can kick your shoes off. Oh no, the boss is coming. You're not off the hook. Yeah, that's why she's the boss. Okay, so we go back and see. This one goes to Rhonda. Yeah. Okay, let me back up here. We'll give you a few more. We'll give you till 7:30, so we'll get through it. Get some more questions done here. Okay, here's the question. If elected, how do you plan to delegate duties in the clerk's office? Will you assign one person to handle each department and duty, or will you train all employees on all departments and duties?
Well, my favorite way to run an office is cross-training. I worked with a lady who had what she called her Mack truck file, and that was if anything ever happened to her, she had that file because she was the only one in the office. Things happen, life happens. People get hurt, people quit, and I've talked to people who, it's always shocking to me, this is not my personality or what I do, but that I refuse to train anybody who comes in after me. That is not my job. That's not how I look at it. I never want to leave an office without having them being as equipped as they can when I leave. So in answering the question, I would really like it if people could be cross-trained as much as possible. There may be things that have to be headed over by one of the other clerks, whether it be the payroll or the accounts payable. But I would assume everyone should know how to do all the titling. Anything at the counter, you should be able to handle. But again, it's going to be an assessment of who's working in there and how everybody works together as a team is what my goal would be.
Right now in the clerk's office, we all kind of have our specialty. I would implement more cross-training, not as so much cross-training, but also as a way to separate some of the duties and then have a rotation of the duties so that everyone can do everyone else's job. I believe a good leader is always training their replacement. And so I believe even the job of the county clerk should be something that anyone should be able to step in and do. Not only is that good management, it's also good regarding our audit. The auditors like to see a separation of duties and cross-training, and then the rotation of duties, so that no one has one particular part of the office locked down, and so that anything haywire like you were talking about could happen. Okay.
I think there is value in taking advantage of people's skills and building on them. When you have a clerk who is great with payroll, I see the value in letting them having that be their main role. And I see the value when somebody, for example, is very detail oriented, having them be the head person on elections. But cross-training is always important. And cross-training always sounds good when we talk about it. Cross-training sounds great. We all do the other person's job. But at the end of the day, I think the most important thing is to actually take the time and build manuals. Build manuals on how to run payroll. Build manuals on how to go through an election. And I mean, these have to be detail-specific manuals with screenshots so that literally someone could walk in off the street and do the job. Because if that's truly, when we're talking about transparency, when we're talking about making sure that this office can run with or without you, that's one way that you can step forward into making sure that everyone's cross-trained and that anyone can do that job.
She had 30 seconds left. We have manuals.
It's against you. Okay, you can keep the mic there. You get first shot at this one. Okay, there are frequent stories in the news about election hacking. As county clerk, what steps would you take to make sure that our elections are secure? Also, how would you modernize our election system?
We just did modernize our election system. Mary spent a lot of money, and we have very up-to-date election system, the up-to-date election system now. Election hacking, you hear about it. I do not see how that could happen with our software and with our election equipment. It's separate. There's no way it could communicate with either or. The main thing, I would think, as far as the county clerk is concerned, is to maintain the integrity of the election on our level. For instance, I work in the clerk's office this year. This year I have nothing to do with the elections. And so you have to maintain that kind of separation and maintain the integrity of the election in the clerk's office.
I think we all almost need to give Mary a round of applause, because this is just one of many times where Mary's planned for the future. When other counties are sitting around and waiting for federal funding to come in and buy them new election equipment, Mary had funds set aside to go out and purchase it so that everyone in her staff, every election judge could be there, it could work, and there wouldn't be problems. We do have the most updated equipment in the state, and I think that's phenomenal. And when it comes to election hacking, again, buzzword, it sounds really scary. But what's wonderful about the equipment that we have is, yes, it's digital, but it can also be hand counted, and it will be. So that way, even if it somehow was hacked, you still have the ballots to count and see what the actual votes were.
I have to be really honest, I don't know anything about the election software, and so it is good to hear that we updated that. But I've always wondered that as well, is how does anybody get that done? Obviously, you have to have trusted people working in there as you're doing your counting and stuff, and again, going back to building those relationships and having the correct people in there that can be trusted and dealing with that. So.
pass the mic down to Tara. With the boss's approval, we're going to let them give their final statement. Would that be agreeable? Or do you want me to ask them another one? One more question, she says. Wow, you guys over. Okay, one more question, Tara. You get this one first. How would you define the job description of Sublette County Clerk, and how would you describe the job description of your deputy clerks?
I think this is a really nice question. We've spent a lot of time on budget tonight, but I think if you actually went and spent a day, an hour in our county clerk's office, you would find that budgeting is a small percent of the day. I have spent a lot of time on the phone and in the offices of county clerks across the state trying to get a better understanding of what it takes to be a county clerk. The clerk's job ends up being, in some forms, a little bit of a firefighter and a little bit of a cruise director. You have people who come in that office day in, day out, and they want to speak to a commissioner, and they want to speak to the clerk. And you need to sit down with them and be able to address their issues, direct them to the right part of the county that could address their issues. The clerk's job is to be friendly, to be helpful, to not necessarily interpret the law, but be able to share the law with people that have questions, have ideas, have issues that they need dealt with. The clerk's job is very much to be professional, but also be personal. When it comes to the clerks in the office, each one of the ladies that work there, taking the time to educate the public so that their job is easier will go a long way. I think that there's a lot that they can be trusted to do, and as you hear Carrie talk, there's a lot that the clerks do. So you make sure they're trained, you work with them, you build them up, and you make sure that you have a fully functioning, friendly, efficient office.
It is a big job. The more I've looked into it and read, all the qualifications that it took, it's a lot. And especially in this county where you do have the budget and the payroll. Some of the other counties, those offices are not in there, and so you are over a lot of things. And the other thing, I do think a lot of people come to you because they want to get to the commissioners, or they want to know why this is going on. They hear you do the budget, and for some reason you're all of a sudden over this department or that department. And so I think it is an office where you should be able to educate, direct people into where to go find the correct answer, whether it's from that office or assisting them to get to the correct office. So again, that liaison between the public and the rest of the offices. I would assume, just as I would in any office, that all of the deputies are trained to do every job in that office, that they should be able to, or if not, again, be able to direct someone. If the clerk's not there to tell them where to go, that they should be able to tell you, hey, you need to go to the district court, or you need to go to wherever you need to do to get that, or the treasurer's office does this, step over next side, or to the next door. So again, it's going back to that education and being able to direct them in the correct place and be friendly and educational about it.
The duty of the county clerk is to oversee the operations of the county clerk's office. Since I have this written down, I would like to go over the statutory duty of the county clerk in reference to the commissioners. The clerk shall attend all sessions of the Board of County Commissioners, either in person or by deputy. Keep the sealed records and papers of the Board of County Commissioners. Record in a book provided for that purpose all proceedings of the board. Make regular entries of all the board's resolutions. Sign all orders by the board for payment of money, and preserve and fill all accounts acted upon by the board with a memorandum of its action therein, and perform other duties as required by the Board of the Commissioners. That's the duty of the county clerk regarding the commissioners. It's the recorder of information. The duties of the deputy clerks is to record the information that comes in the office, whether it's a car title, land documents, or if directed by the county clerk to go take the minutes at the commission meeting. Our job, every single one of us in there, is to record information.
Pass it back to Rhonda. This is musical mic. Okay, so you have 1.5 minutes to give us your final summary of everything you want these people here to know. They're all dying to know what your final thoughts are. Give them something to take home, a minute and a half each.
Okay. First of all, I do want to thank everybody for coming. This is quite exciting because as we have went to different events around the county, I do think that people have shown kind of a lack of interest in what I would have felt. So this is amazing to see this many people tonight. I want to thank Donna and the Sublette County Republican Party for hosting this forum. They've all put in a lot of work for this. And I would like to also thank Carrie and Tara for throwing their name in the hat for County Clerk. It's important that we have people who are willing to run for a public office and to dedicate the time and money it takes to run a campaign. The choice you have for County Clerk boils down to this. You have 3 candidates with 3 different platforms that they are running on. Carrie's platform is that she's an employee of the County Clerk and has worked there for 5 years. Tara's is that she is very deeply rooted in Sublette County. She was born and raised here, and she knows a lot of people and wants to work for them. She loves and cares about this county very much. As for me, my platform is I've been working in the bookkeeping world for 32 years. I've been in charge of monitoring budgets, accounts payable and receivables, payroll, HR issues, Medicaid, Medicare. I've dealt with employees, co-workers, lawyers, government officials, managers, owners, and boards of directors. I've worked in agriculture, trucking, oil and gas, and healthcare industries. I've worked with sole proprietors, partnerships, corporations, subcorps, nonprofits, and numerous volunteer groups. I've managed several offices and their staff, and I've had to deal with customer and public relations in all those. Well, it's down to 3 choices. I hope you all vote on August 21st.
Thank you again for your time and attention this evening. The original layout of the clerk's office intended that the clerk have a space with the deputy clerks, and what is now Mary's office was a conference room. Mary's space was where Tracy now sits. When the boom hit Sublette County, the traffic at the front counter increased, and an additional deputy clerk was needed to handle that traffic. So Mary moved into the conference room to make space for the additional deputy clerk. We are no longer in a boom, and 3 of us handle the customers at the counter in addition to our other duties. If I am elected county clerk, I will go back to the original plan for the county clerk's office, fully visible, fully accessible, overseeing the day-to-day operations of the office. I will facilitate communication between the public and the commissioners or department heads, whichever the case may be, or assist the public with anything that involves the clerk's office. I am a certified public accountant and the only candidate with experience in government accounting and government financial statements, and the only candidate with experience with the county's budget of $234 million. The county clerk is not a figurehead and not an executive secretary. I'm asking for your vote so I can put the 5 years of experience I have in the clerk's office to work for you. I know what positive changes can be made to the current clerk's office, and I know what duties are required by statute. Thank you.
Like Rhonda, I want to thank you all for being out tonight. It's really heartening to see a room this full and to see so many familiar faces. And Rhonda's not wrong. I am the inexperienced person up here. I'm running because I love this county, because I love its people, I see its values, and I want to step into that office and be able to continue the job that's been done, the thoughtful leadership that has led this county. And as I've talked to clerks across the state, they look to Sublette County when they have a question. They look to Sublette County when they're trying to figure out issues in their own county. We are a leader, and I really would like to continue that. I believe when it comes to voting, I hope that when you guys take the opportunity to go out and vote, which you can do right now, or you can vote on August 21st, I hope that you think about finding someone who's diplomatic and energetic. I hope that you are looking to someone who has insight and can predict our future or plan for our future. I hope that you can find someone who will work with a smile, even when they may not want to. Somebody who understands that professional also means pleasant. Someone with conservative values, leadership, and communication skills. Someone who understands the dedication of the clerk's office. This is a marathon, it is not a sprint. It is a time and an opportunity for each one of us to step up there and show our best. And I hope that when it comes down to the time that you guys go to, here I go again, that you can elect someone with thoughtful, common sense leadership.
You know, two words that came up constantly among these three candidates, if y'all were listening very closely, they all said friendly, and they all said efficiently. And I think that's important. I can't vote in this county, or it would be elector fraud, as we talked about earlier. But if I could, I'd vote for all three of you. I think we need to just give a quick round of applause for the three clerks. Doesn't mean you get to sit down. You get to sit there, kick back, take your shoes off. Clayton, Mike, please put your shoes back on. The electric chairs for the clerk end, it's been turned off, yours have been turned on. The rules of the game, you get 3 minutes to tell us why you're running for office and what you have to offer. After that 3 minutes, we'll proceed to the 1.5 minutes. Not 1.5
You want another 3 minutes?
No. They already did that. You don't get 3 more minutes.
I can go for another 3.
No, doesn't. Shock his chair. Okay. So we're going to go right on to questions then. And Clayton, we'll start with the first question, exactly the same as we did previously. Here's the first question for the county attorney candidates. As the county attorney, who do you represent? The citizens, the individual elected officials, the sheriff's office, etc.? Who do you represent?
This question is similar to a question that was asked at the last forum, and it's important to distinguish with the county prosecuting attorney's office the separate duties of the office. On the prosecution side of the office, I represent the state of Wyoming in all criminal prosecutions occurring in Sublette County relating to crimes against the state of Wyoming. In the civil side of the job, the county attorney position, under Title 18, the county attorney represents the county and its elected officials and represents them in the civil courts. We provide legal opinions. Some of you may have visited a commissioner meeting and seen one of our deputies sitting in there. We provide legal advice to all of the elected officials. Currently, we also will work with employees if they have questions. Oftentimes that gets a little bit sticky because we do represent the elected officials and not the employees, but we try to help those folks out.
Absolutely. There are some bizarre quirks in the law. Actually, the county attorney is mandated to represent people with severe mental illness in divorce cases. I don't know why that's the case, but that's one of the laws on the books. So I do feel like you represent the citizens, even though technically Mr. King is absolutely correct. You represent the state of Wyoming criminal cases and all of the elected officials in the various endeavors and some boards as well. I take this job as representing each and every one of you if I'm elected. I give 100% to do the absolute best job that I can. Because ultimately, I answer to each and every one of you if I'm elected. And if I'm not doing what's best for you, then I shouldn't be here. So that's my take on that.
Thank you. Mike. Here's the second question. What factors do you evaluate to determine whether the county attorney's office is over or understaffed? And do you think the office currently has too many or too few attorneys and/or employees?
My opinion at this point is that the Sublette County Attorney's Office is in fact overstaffed, and I can base that on statistics which are indisputable. There are roughly close to 10,000 citizens in Sublette County right now, and there's 4 attorneys in the office total, 1 county attorney and 3 deputies, which is roughly equals out to about one attorney per 2,500 residents. By comparison, Sweetwater County has about real close to 50,000 in their population, and they have 10 attorneys. So that's 1 per 5,000. The interesting twist on that is Sublette County, Sweetwater County has twice the crime per capita that Sublette County has. So the inverse is that it's actually the inverse of what it should be, in my opinion, just with those 2 respective counties. If I am elected, as I've said before, I believe that the county attorney and the county has an obligation to its employees to not just arbitrarily hand out pink slips just because you believe you're overstaffed, because those employees were not the cause of that problem. But I will most likely look very carefully at not filling that 4th position if an attorney resigns or quits, just because I believe we are at this current point well overstaffed. And as a fiscal conservative, I believe I owe the obligation to each of you citizens to run the most financially efficient office possible. That's what I intend to do.
Mr. Crossan is correct. There are 4 attorneys currently working at the office. I believe we are appropriately staffed at this time. I am always constantly looking at numbers to make sure that we're within the norms of other offices throughout the state. When we look at Sweetwater County has been held up as the paragon of prosecution standards and staffing, and I would submit to you that Sweetwater County is not the norm throughout the state. A call went out through the Wyoming County Prosecuting Attorneys Association via an email to look at criminal statistics to see what everybody is doing throughout their offices. I can tell you that our office is right in the middle. We're right in line with the other offices in terms of caseload and cases being handled by attorneys. Currently, my office is handling upwards of 50 active felony cases. We have upwards of 200 active misdemeanor cases. We have 22 juvenile cases and 10 juvenile diversion cases. These cases can take some time. Some are easier than others. And based on that, on those numbers, I feel our office is appropriately staffed.
Next question. Sergeant Clayton, here's the question. Excuse me. What is your philosophy in dealing with the youth of our county, first-time offenders and habitual offenders?
When we're looking at the youth of our community, the first thing we need to look at or to keep in mind is that they are children. And we were all children. And kids make mistakes. And whether those mistakes are criminal or not, it's hard to say sometimes. And whether a kid who decides to steal something from the store, that's a criminal act, absolutely. Is that a kid that needs to go through the criminal justice system, to the juvenile justice system? Probably not. And we need to, when we're looking at the juvenile justice system, keep in mind that these kids will make mistakes, and sometimes if you bring them in through the juvenile justice system, we can do a lot more damage to these kids who are just making mistakes. On first-time offenders, I think we need to keep in mind that this is the first time that they've come through the criminal justice system. And for some of them, they've never been in trouble before. For other times, it's the first time we caught them. And it's when you look at those cases, you need to take each case on its face and on the facts of the case, and you need to look at the facts behind the defendant. Habitual offenders, those are the folks that we need to really look at in terms of longer incarcerations. We need to look at those folks for more intensive treatment.
The goal of the criminal justice system, it's not criminal and juvenile cases, but the goal of juvenile adjudication is rehabilitation and not punishment, as set forth in Supreme Court cases. So I essentially agree with Mr. Kaner. I'm one who has long advocated that kids usually deserve a second chance. I've seen a lot of good kids who've gotten in trouble for some fairly serious things early on in life, and they ended up making great things of themselves. If you end up fully prosecuting them, evidence shows, that studies show, that can actually negatively impact the children. They end up getting into even more trouble if you're vigorously prosecuting them the full extent of the law. There are cases, of course, where there's violent acts and things of that nature where you need to take it very seriously. But the run-of-the-mill juvenile case, I agree with the version in many of those cases where the child is not put in the system and given a chance through community service or some other avenue to make amends. It just depends on the case, but I certainly am not one who believes in sticking juveniles as hard as you can in every case. That's very improper, and I will be doing that finally.
Next question. What is your trial win-loss record, and why should the public be confident that you can win the important trials that keep the public safe?
I honestly don't know my record. I've done several jury trials, more than 24, possibly 3 dozen. I remember losing 3 of those. So since I've been in Sublette County, I've tried 5 cases, and I've prevailed in 4 of those. I'm sorry, could you repeat the second question? Absolutely.
Now, the first part of that was, what is your win-loss record, your trial win-loss record, and why should the public be confident that you can win the important trials that keep the public safe?
I have won the important trials actually in my career. I've convicted 2 persons of murder. One was a very complicated case. I'm very proud of that particular case because it required some outside of the box thinking to make that case and proceed with it to trial. Essentially, there was a stopping of a juvenile by some Air Forcemen down in Cheyenne when I was assistant DA. There were so many people involved, it was very difficult to determine who had done what. So thinking outside the box, I went and found that a person had actually transported them out of the state of Wyoming somehow when they left after they committed this crime. I nailed it down to 3 or 4 different people. Actually found U-Haul records, determined who the person was that actually had driven them back to Mississippi. Did have detectives from the sheriff's office to Sublette at that point, ended up getting a good statement out of that person. The case was so bad that my boss had wanted me to offer a 3 to 5 year sentence just to make the case go away. The defense attorney was confident he was going to win. Declined to do that, ended up going to trial, and I won that case. I'm very proud of that. So I do have that experience winning trials and important trials.
Could you repeat the question?
Absolutely.
Get the right one here. What is your trial win-loss record, and why should the public be confident that you can win the important trials that keep the public safe?
This may seem like a strange answer, but I intentionally do not keep track of my win-loss record in trial. And the reason I do that is because one of the guiding principles for me in this profession comes from a case called U.S. v. Singer, and it's a Supreme Court justice opinion from the 20s. And in that case, Justice Learned Hand wrote what the role of the prosecutor is. And Justice Learned Hand wrote that it is not the goal of the prosecutor to win the case, but to ensure that justice is done. And that's what I do day in and day out. One thing I think that's important to keep in mind that nationwide and here in Wyoming and in Sublette County, upwards of 99% of cases, of criminal cases, are resolved via plea agreement. So very few cases go to trial. I can tell you I have experience prosecuting complex cases with expert witnesses. I have been successful in those cases. I'm not afraid to take a tough case to trial. The case may not have the best jury appeal, but I'm not afraid to lose, because that also is justice. When you can take that case to a jury, present them with all the facts, that is justice at that moment. Whether or not it's a guilty or innocent verdict or an acquittal, it is justice to present the facts to the jury, who are the people.
Very good. Next question. This sounds like a legislative question, Representative Summer. You might have written this question. Do you support or oppose criminal justice reform that decreases prison population? Why or why not?
That is a difficult question given the criminal justice reform bills that have been presented to the legislature. As a member of the Wyoming County Prosecuting Attorneys Association, we review all of the legislation that comes through to determine whether we're going to support it as an association, whether we're going to take a position, or we're going to oppose it. With the criminal justice reform legislation that has been presented, the association did oppose it because it had a lot of issues, attendant or tertiary issues that I'm not sure if the authors of the bill completely appreciate. I am not opposed to criminal justice reform. Keep in mind that it costs upwards of $50,000 a year to have somebody in the Wyoming State Penitentiary. It costs $70 a day to have somebody here at the Sublette County Detention Center. So there is a tremendous cost whenever we put someone in jail or in the penitentiary. And so anything we can do to look at reforming our laws to ensure that we're keeping the community safe, that we're holding those accountable who commit crimes, but also saving money, and ensuring that the revolving cycle of addiction and crime is broken. That's what we need to look at.
Do you support or oppose criminal justice reform that decreases prison populations? Why or why not?
Well, in effect, that happens quite frequently now just with the parole system. You can get somebody on a sentence of, say, 8 to 10 years and they end up rolling out much sooner than that. So, in effect, it's already happening. I believe that if you're sending somebody to prison for a determined number of years, that they need to be there for that number of years in most of those cases because they've done something that warrants their separation from society. If they're a threat to our children, our communities, all the good people of our communities, they need to be separated. So I think the funds need to be found to keep them there if they need to be there. Now, we obviously need to be very careful that people who are put in prison and in incarceration need to be there. And that's a tough call to make sometimes, but I put paramount importance on the safety of communities. If that requires somebody to be in prison, they need to be there and not let out because we don't have the money or some other excuse. We need to find it because we need to be safe for those kind of people.
Very good. Next question. What experience do you have prosecuting cybercrime, and identity theft? Do you predict an increase in those types of crime in the future? And how will you adapt to prosecute?
I handled a cybercrime case working when I was filling in down in Sublette County helping them. I worked on about 6-8 months ago. And I learned how absolutely complex those cases are, that they're very, very difficult to prosecute. There's so many moving parts. The evidence is so intricate. You end up with a file that is 1.5 feet deep, and it ends up to be such a burden on the office that it's almost mind-boggling. There's just so much to go through. There's all the data that you have to obtain from all the various entities that hold the data, like the ISP addresses, and all the companies that have all the information for the computer. Plus, it's difficult to actually prove who was in front of that keyboard when the crime occurred, because most times they're going to say it wasn't me, it was my brother, it was my friend, it just wasn't me. And you have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt in a criminal case the person you're charging actually committed that crime. So we will need extensive training, I believe, with all prosecutors to handle those kind of crimes in the future, because they're mind-numbing how complex they are. And to try one is almost unfathomable. Given the resources we have, especially in the smaller offices in Wyoming, we don't have specific units like some of the larger cities have, where they have specific units to address these type of crimes. So I will take it seriously. I would fight with every fiber in my game, because it really wrecks lives when people do that to people, and it's traumatic for them to be.
Would you please repeat the question?
I'm sorry. What experience do you have prosecuting cybercrime and identity theft? Do you predict an increase in those types of crimes in the future? And how will you adapt to prosecute them?
To start, I'll answer that question in reverse. I think we will see an increase in these crimes. We see it on the national level, where we see these large companies being targeted by hackers, and they're able to get in and they're able to steal money, they're able to steal information. All of us right now probably have information out there on the dark net that somebody could get to and use to commit fraudulent acts. I have prosecuted identity theft cases. I've also prosecuted cybercrime cases, and in this day and age, oftentimes the two are exactly the same. So if you find an identity theft case, you're also going to find a cybercrime case. Mr. Crossan is absolutely right. They're very difficult, complex cases. We had just a misdemeanor trial for electronic impersonation. The thing took 2 days because of the volume of information that you need to present to a jury to have them find that individual guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. We prosecuted a couple individuals here who stole information here in Pinedale, took it across state lines, making fake IDs, making fake PayPal accounts. We successfully prosecuted those 2 individuals, and they were actually both sentenced to penitentiary time for that. But it was a difficult prosecution, I can tell you that.
question. As county attorney, how would you handle a fatal use of force incident involving local police?
There is currently a split amongst the various county attorneys throughout the state. Some county attorneys would refuse to even look at the case and would ask for a special prosecutor to be appointed. Some of the county attorneys take the position that it's my job, I have to make the tough decision. I fall in line with it's my job, I have to make a tough decision regarding a fatal shooting or a fatal incident involving law enforcement. One thing though, one caveat I would give to that is we live in a small community and I work closely with law enforcement, day in and day out. Some of them I consider my friends. And if an individual with whom I have close ties commits a crime, whether it be a law enforcement or a friend, I cannot prosecute that crime in the name of the state of Wyoming. I'd like to think I could be fair, but that is a situation where you go to the county commissioners and you ask for a special prosecutor to be appointed, so there's no question that what is done is fair, that I would handle a fatal incident using, or fatal force incident with law enforcement.
I guess I respectfully disagree with that, because the problem going down that road is if you find, and in the vast majority of these cases, it's justified shooting when law enforcement is involved. However, you're obviously going to have family members, friends, and various other people on the other side who are going to start raising up red flags if you find it to be a justified shooting. So I think the prudent thing to do in those cases is actually send it to another county attorney's office for review. And that way it eliminates at least that allegation that there was some special treatment given or lack of oversight by the prosecutor because of the relationship they may have with law enforcement. So it is a matter of opinion. I just respectfully disagree, and I would be more inclined to go the opposite route.
Thank you. Next question. What is your approach to prosecuting drug possession charges for individuals who have entered our state from a neighboring state where these drugs are legal? Do you believe there should be any leniency for drugs that were purchased legally and then brought to Sublette County?
I do not believe there should be leniency. As citizens, we're all required to know the law in various states where we travel. For example, if you carry a concealed weapon, in Wyoming, it's fairly easy to do. You go to some other states and it's almost totally prohibited. And yet, if you go to those states, you're not going to get preferential treatment because you're from Wyoming and you're not expected to know better. So my attitude towards that is they should be treated just like everybody else, residents of Wyoming as well as them. If they're going to bring illegal substances into our state, it's most likely they know they're doing it illegally, and if they don't, they should know better. We want to keep those things out of the state until the time comes, if and when the legislature changes that law. I intend to fully enforce it equally without bias among all people, regardless of whether.
I agree with Mr. Cross, and I don't think there should be any leniency when it comes to the possession of a controlled substance here in Sublette County, merely because you come from a state which has, quote unquote, legalized marijuana. And I guess to put that in perspective, there really is no legal marijuana. It's still unlawful to possess under federal law as well. What we see oftentimes here in Sublette County, and it's a pretty classic scenario, you have a car full of young men heading to Jackson for a ski trip, snowboard trip, and they get pulled over. They're always speeding. They get pulled over, and sure enough, they've got marijuana in the car. And most times they all admit to it, and some will even say, hey, I've got a medical card. Well, under Wyoming law, that medical card is not a prescription. It is not a defense to the possession of marijuana in Wyoming. I agree with Mr. Crossan. Most of the people coming across the border are under no illusions that it's lawful to possess. There is some confusion with the medical cards, but we do our best to make it clear that that is not a prescription, and it's not a get out of jail free card.
Okay, next question. Are you or will you be accessible to the public, or will you use your staff to guard off or to guard you from public scrutiny and interaction?
I feel that I'm accessible to the public. I tell anybody, if you have any issue with anything that I've done, with what my office is doing, give me a call, write me a letter, shoot me an email. And whether or not on that particular issue I can respond, maybe, maybe not. If it's an active criminal prosecution, I can't talk about it. If somebody disagrees with the decision that I've made in a case regarding whether or not to file charges, I have a duty under the National District Attorneys Association procedures to tell you why I declined the case, or why did I charge this case the way I did. I feel that I owe that to the citizens and the community to defend the decisions I make, because nothing I do is arbitrary. In terms of having my staff, I guess, fend off the public, we don't do that. If a particular attorney is handling a case, that attorney owes it to people who have questions and concerns to talk with them. We've had some high-profile cases where we received voluminous emails from multiple citizens on both sides of the issue. And one of the hardest things to do as a prosecutor when you get those emails is to sit on your hands, but you have to do it. You cannot talk about a case that is currently being prosecuted, even though you want to tell those folks why you did what you did.
I always have been a firm believer that the public should not be precluded from receiving information unless it's absolutely necessary. Mr. King is right, there are many instances in this particular job, county attorney, where you can't disclose what's going on with the case. However, I will, without a doubt, try my best to explain why I cannot release information if such is the case and any citizen is interested. There comes a time in virtually every case where you can, as soon as possible, like I can release information without jeopardizing the case or the safety of citizens or law enforcement. I definitely intend to do everything in my power to be active in keeping the community informed as much as I can about what's going on in the office. Absolutely, I would not only tolerate, would not tolerate a firewall of any kind in my office. I think we should all be very cognizant that we serve you and we have a duty to each and every citizen do everything we can to provide information.
Okay, this is the shortest question of the night. It's not the last question, however. What is your opinion on granting deferrals?
I've wrestled with this ever since I was in law enforcement 23 years ago, I guess, and sometimes I was very upset when prosecutors gave deferrals to people. It's a difficult thing, and because you are setting a precedent that it's, in most cases where it's a one-time get out of jail free card. On the other hand, there are people who have been upstanding citizens for their entire life and make one mistake, and in those cases, it is warranted. I would say that it has to be uniformly applied if you're going to offer deferrals, though you can't just pick and choose, and there has to be some system where it shows that there's a fair system involved. And that's a very difficult thing to do. But I think they should be used sparingly, because the intent of those is such that you are getting a heck of a deal, and because if you pass probation after deferral, your case is dismissed, and you were never convicted of anything. That becomes an issue in cases like DUIs, because as you get more and more offenses, there's greater and greater penalties as it goes along. So law enforcement in some instances is opposed to those, obviously, because somebody actually is a second offense when they get caught is charged the first because they got a deferral the first time around. So you have to be very judicious and careful in letting those out. I will offer deferrals in appropriate cases, but I will not hand them out like candy. I think that sends the entirely wrong message, and that'll be my position.
The deferral statute under Wyoming law, there's actually two of them. There's Wyoming statute 713-301, that's the general deferral statute. That's for essentially any crime, including felony crimes that are not violent. And there's also Wyoming statute 35-7-1037, and that's a specific deferral statute that relates to the dismissal of charges related to the possession of controlled substances, either felony or misdemeanor. It is not applicable in cases in which there's distribution of controlled substances. Under Wyoming statute 35-7-1037, the state is not required to consent to that deferral, and oftentimes we'll have defense attorneys and defendants come in and argue that their client is deserving of that 1037 deferral to the judge, and the judge may grant it, and there's nothing the state can do. Looking at the 301 deferrals, which are a bit more common because they address every crime, essentially. You look at Billis versus State, that a deferral is essentially a pardon by the executive. And we don't see a lot of pardons. But I think with the deferral system that we have set up now, I think if each case can be evaluated on its face with the unique circumstances of the defendant and that offense, if a deferral is appropriate, if the individual is deserving of it, then it ought to be given. We need to give people a second chance, because these convictions can follow people for a lifetime.
Next question. What would your policy be regarding charging children in adult court? When would you use your authority to file charges in adult court, and when would you pursue a case in juvenile court?
Under Title 14 of the Wyoming statutes, there are certain limitations as to when the juvenile court has what's called exclusive jurisdiction, meaning the prosecutor doesn't get a say as to where that particular case goes, and that's delineated by age of the offender, by the nature of the crime, and whether it's a subsequent crime. There are some offenses that you can't even take to the juvenile courts. And then there are the ones that are in between. And that, making that decision whether to charge a young person who's committed a crime, either as an adult in the adult court or a juvenile, or as a juvenile in the juvenile court, is a tough decision to make. The Wyoming statutes do give us, I won't say a matrix, but they give us a list of items that we are to consider. And keep in mind that even if the state opts to take that case through the adult court, if you get that case and you say, boy, this is a bad case, we have a victim, we really need to get justice for these folks, and you want to take it to the adult courts, the defendant can actually ask for a hearing to have the court remove it from the adult court and put it into the juvenile courts. So it's not entirely on the prosecution to make that decision.
What would your policy be regarding charging children in adult court? When could you use your authority to file charges in adult court? And when would you pursue a case in juvenile court?
There are statutory factors laid out that give you guidance as to when you will file a juvenile as opposed to adult court. Generally, the younger the individual, the more likely they're to be in juvenile court. The less serious the offense, the more likely they will end up in juvenile court. If you get more serious offenses in an older juvenile, those tend to wind up more in the adult court. In certain circumstances, typically violent felonies. So my policy would be, as I said earlier, I think that it's appropriate to consider the purpose of juvenile court, which is rehabilitation, and try not to create wars of the system as they go into adulthood. So I prefer juvenile court in those appropriate cases. In extremely violent cases where you have an older juvenile who has a long record, there are times when it's appropriate to go to adult court. Mr. Kaner's correct. In many instances, the defense attorney, in almost every case they would, the defense attorney would try to get a remanded back to the juvenile court. It's called a transfer hearing. And so that's my policy. I don't want to unnecessarily saddle juveniles with a record that's going to end up burdening all of us in society with incarceration as they enter adulthood and beyond.
Now, I would preface the next question, and you've answered this question before in a previous debate or forum, that you have 2 members of the Governor's Task Force on Opioid Abuse. So we're taking notes when you answer this question. Albert's taking notes, I'm not. What would be your suggestions regarding the opioid issues in Sublette County?
As I said before, there's 2 kinds of opioid issues. There's the prescription drug problem, which many of us have seen people go through. It's terribly traumatic, and I hope that the legislature, they're currently working on this issue, and I hope that they come up with some resolution. I think ultimately there's going to have to be some kind of laws that limit what doctors can possibly do with prescribing opioids. It's a very complicated issue. There are people in pain who need the help, but the opioids are incredibly addictive, and once you're hooked, it's really, really difficult to get off it. So I look forward to some kind of legislative solution to try and address that. The flip side of that is the illegal heroin problem that we have right now, which is also an opioid. And my policy would be to aggressively prosecute heroin dealers. I think it's the most terrible drug I've ever seen. As I said in the prior debate, people who are on that actually look like zombies. They have no expression on their face. They're white as a ghost. It's an absolutely horrible thing. So I will have zero tolerance for heroin dealers. I will work to the best of my ability with the legislature if there's any way I can ever do that to try to come up with a resolution to the prescription opioid problem. And we've got to find a solution to it because it's really starting to wreck our society and our communities, and we're even finding it here in Wyoming. It's got to be addressed.
When it comes to opiate abuse, I agree with Mr. Crossan that heroin is awful stuff. But oftentimes the people that we see ending up on heroin started at a doctor's office with a legal prescription for a painkiller, and they found themselves with chronic pain and no alternatives to addressing that pain. Nothing new or different was provided by the medical community, and so they find themselves on these drugs for long periods of time, and they are tremendously addicted. We have people who are upstanding citizens of this community who will throw their lives away because of addiction to pills. We need to get those people help. We need more treatment resources here in Sublette County in particular. We once had 2 treatment providers here that could help folks who are suffering with addiction. We're now down to 1 treatment provider. There is a lack of inpatient care available to those who are suffering with addiction. From a criminal prosecution standpoint, we have and will continue to go after the dealers and the sellers of this drug. People selling pills, people selling their fentanyl patches for others to chew on. Those are the people that we'll go after.
This is going to be your final question before your summary. We'll turn the chairs off after that. As the highest ranking law enforcement official in the county, what is your top priority?
My top priority as the Chief Law Enforcement Officer here in Sublette County is community safety. Everything we do, every case we file, every agreement we enter into, every trial we prepare for should be related to community safety. And when we look at all of the crimes set forth in Title VI, Title 35, Title 31, those all boil down to community safety, safety of our information if it's ID theft, our physical safety if it comes to somebody attacking us, to the safety of our loved ones on the road when there's somebody behind the wheel of a vehicle under the influence. That is the top priority. I'm sure Sheriff Lear would agree. That is his top priority. And I can't think of any priority higher than that.
Absolutely good. As the Chief Law Enforcement Officer, obviously there are many other things the county is really but in that role, absolutely, community safety has to be the thing we aspire to achieve. And to that end, I look forward to, if I'm elected, to working closely with law enforcement. I believe they're on a very good trajectory right now in Sublette County under Sheriff Blair. If I'm elected, I want to do my part to ensure that the no stone unturned approach to the criminal justice system results in justice being properly meted in every case.
Thank you, gentlemen. Closing remark, give them something to take home and remember to think about in 1.5 minutes.
So I'll expound a little bit about where I stand on various issues regarding the budget. Right now, Sublette County is at $741,000 is what they requested for the budget through the county attorney's office. That is much higher than neighboring counties. And again, a big part of that, I believe, is because we have such a high degree of staffing. When you look at the caseloads, I respectfully disagree with Mr. Kaner that we don't have the caseload compared to some of the other jurisdictions. So I think we need to address that and get those costs down. Conservative values mandate that you run the most effective government that you can at the most cost-effective amount. I don't believe that's being done presently, and I intend to do everything in my power to bring those costs down. I intend to do that. Obviously, as I said, I'm not going to let people go. I'm not going to hand out pink slips, so it may take me a while to achieve the results I want, but that's going to be at my sights from the get-go. Second aspect I'd like to address is I want to foster a good relationship with all the elected officials. I think there's been too much reactive interactions and not enough proactive regarding stopping problems before they start. It's much easier to stop them, prevent a problem from happening than to try to address it from the county attorney's side. So I tend to meet with elected officials regularly to avoid situations like we had with newspaper rape, the lawsuit a couple of years ago. That was dead in the water before it ever started. The Sublette County Attorney's Office should have informed the commissioners that was going nowhere fast. It could have resulted in a very bad situation for Sublette County. Thankfully, it did not. But I want to work to stop the problems before they start.
I would like to finish these forums by addressing a couple of issues that my opponent has brought up. The most recent issue that he just spoke of is the newspaper lawsuit. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it. It was in the news for quite a while because it involved them. I can tell you that the legal advice that we gave to the commissioners was they were going to get sued and they were probably going to lose. If you look at the actual summary judgment brief, the judge said as much. The editorial opinions said as much. I'd also like to address concerns about the budget. $741,000, that's a lot of money, I get it. But keep in mind that upwards of $98,000 of that budget is for Title 25 billing. That doesn't go to an attorney, it doesn't go to pay anything except for the medical care and costs of those who are involuntarily hospitalized. That when it comes to salaries, half of my salary is paid by the state of Wyoming. Another $90,000 for the salaries of licensed professional attorneys is paid for by the state of Wyoming. When you adjust for how our office is actually funded, Sublette County is receiving competent legal counsel, prosecution of crimes for about $470,000. We are a county with a budget of $47 million and 170 employees. I think that's a pretty good deal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, the clerk candidates thought they were off the hook. They're asleep, some of them. I just want to run quickly down the line. This is a 30-second question. It's not a hard one. It's an easy one. Because everybody sitting at those tables deeply loves Wyoming and deeply loves Sublette County. Here's the question. You get 30 seconds. The chairs are turned off. If you go 31, you're okay. 2 reasons. What makes living in Sublette County so great? 30 seconds. Go ahead, Rhonda.
Obviously, the beauty of the mountains every day. I thank God that I get to drive through that town and look at the beauty of the mountains and then the beauty of the people. There's a great spirit here. There's a spirit of independence, which can sometimes be a little bit frustrating, but it's also very admirable. We've been very blessed in the last 12 years to be here and to raise our kids here, and I've enjoyed so much getting to meet all the different levels of people in this county.
The beauty of the scenery is amazing. I wasn't expecting it when I moved here in 2011, but when I got here, I was just amazed. But the beauty of the people is astounding. I have seen not beautiful people in my life, and I can tell you that the people in Sublette County are not only beautiful, but they're happy. And they're happy in their jobs, and they're happy in their lives, and that's a huge thing. It doesn't happen that in all places, and so we're very, very fortunate to live in a place where people are happy.
You can't not say the people. The people in this community are incredible. I mean, I just sit up here and I can't help but smile watching Sue and Albert. We have amazing people that call us home and make this community what it is. So the people that make the community, and right there you've got two things. This community took a chance on a 32-year-old woman, or 32 years ago on a young woman, and I hope today and on August 21st she'll take a chance on another young woman with a dream.
Same question to us.
I can't read it again because it's not written down.
30 seconds is an awful short time to answer that question, so I'll be as succinct as possible. What makes Sublette County one of the best places to live, and I've lived in a lot of places in my lifetime, are the shared values and the freedoms that we enjoy here. The freedom to go for a hike if we want to without having to drive 2 hours. The freedom to if you want to go shooting, you can go shooting. There are so many freedoms that we enjoy here that just are not available anywhere else.
Obviously the people, and going further, what really impresses me about Sublette County is how we all come together. You go to kicking cancer events, which I've been to, and there's so many people there. We have roughly 10,000, maybe fewer than that, people in Sublette County. And yet, even those of us who don't necessarily get along great come together and treat each other with respect, and we work hard to make this a better place for everybody. And I work hard to help kids every chance I get. I've served in help 4-H with their business venture and many, many other things that help children. So that's what makes us great.
Stop sign never goes away, does it? I think we need to give all these candidates a round of applause. A round of applause. They say been awesome. Okay, there's some other people we need to thank here tonight, the people that worked so hard to set this up, and I'm going to butcher some names. Don't show the stop sign sheet. Okay? We need to thank for setting up Debbie Vickery, Jamie Jensen, Joan Mitchell, and the food, which was my favorite part, Nina David, Jamie Jensen, and Marty Stipe. And I don't think we need to forget that the very next and the very last forum is on August 6th. Get out your phones, mark that date, bring a friend. We'll get more chairs, won't we, boss? We'll get more chairs. I would make one suggestion to Donna, and that is we get rid of the stop sign. You're going to need a gong. You're going to need something powerful. These are governor candidates. I just participated with them about 3 weeks ago in a forum. They don't stop when you see the stop sign. So we're going to have something. But it'll be an important one. Be sure it's the last one before the primary, August 21st. August 6th, right here. Correct, Donna? Right here in this very same place? No? Nope. Oh, it goes on the next page. I'm sorry. And I'm going to read this to you. On the morning of August 6th, we're going to start with cinnamon rolls and coffee at 8 a.m. at the Senior Center in Marbleton. Then there will be a meet and greet at Rendezvous Point after lunch, about 1 to 2:30, and then conclude with a meet and greet and forum at the Lubbock Room, beginning at 5:30 p.m. the night of August 6th. We have half-page handouts available with all these details. Please take one home and mark your calendars. Anyone wishing to help with these events, please contact Debbie Vickery, Nina David, Joni Mitchell, or Donna Schaefer. Thank you again for coming tonight, and we look forward to seeing you all on August 6th. Appreciate everyone's questions and